The South Carolina primary is now less than 2 weeks away, and for Joe Biden, that race is going to be critical. Here's what he told Chuck Todd yesterday.
South Carolina is it, isn't it? I mean, you have to win that.
Well, I think you have to do really well in it. But
What's really well? Is there such thing as doing well without winning for you?
Well, I think so. But look, it's not an apt comparison. But Bill Clinton lost his first 8, 10, 12 primaries and caucuses before he won one. I don't plan on taking that long. But we're just getting into the meat of getting to the number of delegates you need to be able to win this election. And I'm confident.
The former vice president is in Reno, Nevada today, stumping ahead of the state's caucuses on Saturday, speaking with voters about everything from gun control and health care to how he would repeal some of President Trump's executive orders once he takes office. NBC News correspondent Mike Memoli is with me now from Reno. And Mike, how's the Biden campaign feeling about their standing in Nevada right now?
They feel good, Allison, but I'll say what Joe Biden couldn't tell Chuck Todd there in that interview.
Okay.
Yes, he needs to win South Carolina. and part of that conversation within the campaign about whether or not he should be, in fact, here in Nevada at all is that they think that they can actually build momentum in South Carolina by performing well here. And so their whole strategy has been to devote a lot of time and resources here in Nevada. And there's a number of advantages they think here that are playing in their favor. One is the single biggest voting bloc here is going to be organized labor. It has an outsized influence in these caucuses in a way that they haven't in any of the two previous contests. And Biden may not have gotten the endorsement of the culinary union, the biggest union in the state. But as he said to a crowd of voters at one event this weekend, in their heart, he knows they're with them. He's been spending a lot of time in between events actually visiting casinos, visiting some of the hospitality industry workers behind closed doors to try to work that vote. And so they think that that works in their favor. But the larger argument for the Biden campaign about at this point and why they think they still have a path to the nomination despite those stumbles in Iowa and New Hampshire is that this is the first electorate really where there is diversity in the electorate. He spent the weekend visiting some black churches. He spent the weekend talking to Latino voters. And Biden, as he said to a crowd just a few hundred yards from me a couple hours ago, that's always been his base in the party is minority voters, but also working class white voters. And so that's why they think they can do well here.
Mike, we see a cyclical thing sort of happening with the Democratic candidates, right? When you're the front runner, you're the person that everybody goes after. When you drop back a little bit, you go on the offense, you go on the attack. Who is Biden going after now after his weak showings in Iowa and New Hampshire?
Well, first, Biden has said himself he's sort of happy not to have that target on his back quite as much as it has been in this campaign. He said to Chuck this weekend, you guys are just starting to give the scrutiny to some of these other candidates that I've been getting for 6 months. But it's been interesting to follow him here because remember in New Hampshire, he trained most of his ammunition on Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg was coming out of Iowa with a real head of steam, and that big voting bloc in New Hampshire that was up for grabs was moderate swing independent voters. Here in Nevada, he has been working much more in terms of Bernie Sanders. And part of it is what I just mentioned about the importance of unions here. The single biggest weapon he has against Bernie Sanders in this state is the issue of health care, specifically what would happen under a Medicare for all system that Bernie Sanders has been championing. Unions have, fought very hard, negotiated very hard, and given up wages in order to get very good health care plans. And under a Medicare for all system, what Biden's been arguing is they're going to lose those benefits in order to have to go on a government-run system. Under Biden's plan to expand the Affordable Care Act, they would be able to keep those union plans that they worked so hard for. And so that's one of the biggest arguments he's been making against Bernie Sanders. The other has to do with guns. Just remember a couple of years ago, the massacre in Las Vegas, the two ads that Biden has on the air right now both have to do with his record in passing the assault weapons ban, passing the Brady background check bill, and his vow that he could beat the NRA once again. And he's pointing out to voters on the stump here that Bernie Sanders actually has voted against the Brady bill, and he also voted for legislation that protected gun manufacturers from liability in terms of any lawsuits that they might face in the wake of any gun tragedy. So that's another big part of his 2-4 on Bernie Sanders here.
Mike, a couple more questions for you. We know Chuck Todd also spoke to Biden about being outspent by other candidates. How's the Biden campaign doing financially?
Not as good as they want to do, frankly,
Yeah.
Allison. And that's why Biden's finishing up an interview inside here with our colleague Nicole Wallace, and then he's going to get on a plane to fly to Colorado, not to raise money, not to campaign, but to raise money. It's surprising. We saw Bernie Sanders just this weekend doing a rally in the Denver area, but it's a measure of just how important it is for him to restock those campaign coffers. He says he's been raising about $350,000 to $400,000 a day online. That's a pretty good clip, but it doesn't match what we've seen even from an AB Klobuchar, who said she's raised $12 million online this month. And so that's a real concern. And that's part of why they are focusing so much on Nevada this week, because they think not only does it help set them up in terms of momentum heading into South Carolina for the primary there, but it helps bring an infusion of money, at least that's the goal, that they can then quickly turn around and put on the airwaves for Super Tuesday states. And there are a lot of those coming up not too long after South Carolina, 4 days, in fact.
Mike, one last question for you. We know Biden picked up an endorsement from Nevada's lieutenant governor. How big of a deal is that? Is that a boost for him there?
I wonder if you polled Nevada voters if they can name their lieutenant governor, but it does speak to, I think,
can't, right?
Yeah, but it's a good sign in this respect, Allison. Coming out of New Hampshire, that 5th place showing following the 4th place showing in Iowa, I was talking about what might be the 18 days of misery for Joe Biden between New Hampshire and South Carolina when he was hoping to have a bounce back. And one of the forms of misery we were looking for potentially was the fact that some of these people who either had endorsed Biden already or were considering endorsing Biden might either flip their endorsement or not endorse him at all. So the fact that he's still winning these kinds of endorsements is a good sign for his campaign. Not only did he get the lieutenant governor who was with him here in Reno today, he got the endorsement of Stephen Horsford. He's one of the 2 Democratic members of Congress in this state who've endorsed him. And he also, the campaign announcing today, the 8th endorsement from a former member of the Obama cabinet, Anthony Fox. He was the transportation secretary in the Obama administration. And also, importantly, he was the mayor of Charlotte before that. Charlotte in North Carolina, that's one of those Super Tuesday states that Biden thinks he can put up a victory in a couple weeks here.
All right, Mike, we'll see what those endorsements can do. Mike Memoli in Nevada, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.